Hi all, so in this video I'm going to go over a number of things, mostly having to do with strings and loops. So let's get started. This class, getData, you've seen this before in the last video. And it's just a helper class that when we create an object of it, we can call the a word, or this is new, the a number method to get a string or a number, an integer actually. Okay, so you can look at, you're going to have this, you can look at it later, but that's enough for that, for now. Let's look around at playing with strings. Now I wrote this out ahead of time because it's just faster that way, but I'll go through it line by line, and I hope it will help you understand a few things about, few new things about programming. Okay, so first we say public class playing around with strings. You do that at the start of every program, or every class. And a class is a program, right? It's just a programming unit. So just to stay on that for a second, like if you say programming is equivalent to writing, well, you can write all kinds of things. You could write a book, you could write a magazine article, you could write a newspaper article, you could write a paper. So those are the units that that your program, your writing are contained within. In this case, we're programming, and the unit that it's contained within is a class. Okay, so with that out of the way, we have the constructor here. Now notice the constructor. First, these two guys are fields, or two fields. Fields are variables. Sometimes they're called instance variables because every time you make an object of the class, you get instances of these variables that you can work with. So we're declaring a variable that will hold a getData object, and we're calling it get. Remember, this is our getData object. So this variable get can hold a getData object, and we're declaring a variable temp that can hold a string object. Straightforward stuff. Okay. In the constructor has the same name as the class and has no return type, unlike all other methods which have return types. The constructor is used for setting up the object of the class when it first gets made. And in this case, what we're doing is we're taking that variable get that can hold a getData object, and we're actually making a new getData object and storing a reference to it so we can get to that getData object. Think of it as like the address where we can get to it. We're storing that in get, the variable get. Okay. Now, first, I have a method called plain1. And let's just see what this does. It prints out a prompt. What ocean lies off California? Temp equals get.aword. So that's that object of getData. So we're asking that object, which we're calling get here, hey, run your aword method and return back a string, because that's what aword returns, and we're storing that string in temp. Then we're using the string equals method to see if what the user typed in equals specific, right? And then if so, we print out correct, right? And we could have an else here if we wanted to. Go ahead and add that in. Say else. And again, when you're programming, learn to copy and paste, right? It saves so much time. So we could long, right? So let's compile that. And we'll make a new one of these. And remember, when we made the new one of these, the constructor was called, and so this actually has a reference to a getData object, not shown here, but it made one. So we'll call plain1. What ocean lies off California? So I'm going to write Pacific. Now some of you are going to say, oh, it's not going to work because wrong, but it is the Pacific. But computers are extremely literal, right? So I didn't type capital P, I just did lowercase p. So let me show you another way to do this. There's we don't write or in Java. Some languages you do, that's why I wrote it. You do the two pipes, which are the key just above the return key, shift in those two vertical bars. That means or in Java. And what we're going to say, if temp.equals specific, and again I'm going to copy, or temp.equals specific. And we could do more of these, right? We could do Pacific Ocean, we could do all the varieties if we really wanted to be serious about this, but this should be good enough for now. So this is basically saying if this condition is true, or this condition is true, then do correct. Let's see if that took care of it. Close that, make a new one of these, call its plain, oops, called the wrong method. And just do that. We'll come back to that. Slow down. Do this one, and I will do Pacific, and it says correct. Okay, cool. Now let's say I change the question to what oceans lie off the east, off the east and west coast. So I'm going to just assume that we're talking about the United States here to make things shorter. So there, we're going to have to get two words, right? We're going to have to get, no, let's do it this way. That's not going to work because the user is going to type them in at the same time. And then we'd have to take that string and split it up somehow, and we don't know how to do that yet. So we'll go back and put it the way it was. I'm just doing undo here. Okay, cool. What ocean lies off California? We'll do copy and paste again. And this time what ocean lies off New York? And we have to use another variable here, so we'll call this string temp2. We didn't need to define this as a string because it's defined as a field up here. So any variable that's defined as a field can be just used within a method, right? But you can also declare variables, they're called local variables, within a method, right? Either way. So now we've got two variables, temp1 and temp2, and in order to get this question right, the person has to answer both of those questions correctly. So we're going to assume that they type it in all in lowercase and that we've told them they should type it in all in lowercase, so we don't need to worry about case issues. But what we need here is an and, because both of these conditions have to be true, whereas when we used an or, if either condition were true, then the whole expression should evaluate the true. But here both expressions, and this is not temp, this is temp2, and this should be what? Atlantic, right? If that is true and that is true, and only then should we print out correct. So let's see if that worked. We're going to make a new one. And plain one. What ocean? Well, Pacific. What ocean lies off New York? Atlantic. Correct. Okay. So you could take this lots of different places, but I think that gives you an example of how you can use ands and ors to have more complex conditions that need to be true in certain ways in order to do one thing or another. Okay? Let's go down to plain 2. Okay, as I mentioned, I added to getData a method that returns an integer value, not a string, right? And we can actually get that by telling the getObject, hey, run your aNumber method, and that actually brings us back an integer value, okay? So please type in a number, in n equals whatever number they return, and then then I output counting down, and now this is something new. This is a while loop, right? So the while loop starts with the word while, and anything within the braces will be done over and over again. That's why it's called a loop, as long as this condition is true, right? So provided the person types in, which is me in just a minute, a number that's greater than 0, it will enter the loop, which means it will come in and do these statements inside the braces, and it will keep doing them as long as that condition is true. So it's really important that you have something within your loop that moves you towards your stopping condition, which is that, right? So if I actually did n equals n plus 1 here, and I started out with a value greater than, if I entered like 1, this thing is just going to keep going forever. It's an infinite loop. It's just going to count up and up and up and up. And not good. Okay, but I'm going to go down. So let's compile that and see how it works. And we'll call plane 2. And please type in a number. I'll type in 45. And look at that. It counted down nicely to 45. Now when you run this, check options up here and make sure that you have on unlimited buffering, otherwise it may not, you won't be able to scroll after the text is scrolled off the screen. Okay? So again, options, unlimited buffering. All right, so cool. So that is an introduction to while loops, right? And you know, we don't have to use 0 here. We could make whatever condition here we want. All right, excellent. All right, plane 3. This is kind of interesting. So we have a prompt. We get a string. We print out, here are the letters of your name. I set a local variable of type integer called num to 0. And then I have the while loop again. And the while loop says, well, another while loop, right? And the condition in this case is while num is less than temp.length. What's temp? Temp is the string that was typed in by the user. Length is a method of the string class that tells me how long the string is, how many characters it has, how many letters are in it, right? And remember, a letter could be any alphanumeric character. Inside the loop, this is the body of the loop, I'm going to output num, which is an integer, plus is a string, plus this is that string variable again, and there's another string method, char at, or char at, some people say. I say char at, and then a specified position in the string. So underneath the hood, so to speak, strings store their letters or their characters in a list. Now, if you remember back to Scratch, when you made a list variable, you could, that had positions in it, right? So think of the letters of a string or the characters of a string being stored in a Scratch list. It's very similar to that. And in another video, I'll go into that a little bit more and show you how that works. But just know that now that's how a string works. And the char at method allows us to access those characters at their positions. So num is 0. So this is first going to access the character at the 0 position. In programming languages, always, 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 you're going to find this pain in the neck, but it's just the way it is. Scratch is very much an exception, so I shouldn't say always. Lists start at 0, right? They don't start at 1, they start at 0. There are reasons for that. I'm not going to go into them right now, but just, if there's a list of anything, the first position is the 0 position. So let's run this, compile it, make a new one, call its plane 3 method, enter your name. My full name is Frederick. And here are the letters of your name. So at the 0 position is F, so that we supplied, that was the first num starts out at 0. 0 is temp char at 0. Well, I said it was in the list. The first thing in the list is the F. So at the 0 position in the list is F, and so on down, right? And the way we're changing num is adding this line num equals num plus 1 here, okay? And that's essential. Otherwise, we would always, num would always be 0, and it would just print over and over again, 0 is f, right? It's essential that num approach our stopping condition, our condition here, which is, that num gets up to temp.length. So we want to be moving num towards our stopping condition, temp.length. Okay, cool. Now let's look at plane 4. All right, so this is, as you get into writing programs that have input from the user, you often need to have situations where you present choices to the user, and you do certain things based upon those choices. A good example is a menu, right? You present a menu to the user, and the user chooses one of the items, and then it does that action. But you may want to be able to return to the menu so that they can choose something else. So this shows you how to do that. So we have a local variable string called choice. Here's a variation of the while loop. This is called the do while loop because the condition is at the end, right? You write the word do. Here's your loop body, just the way this is the loop body of a straight while loop. This is the loop body of a do while loop. And so we present the user with some information. Would you like to play a game? This is the prompt. Enter yes or no. We get their input, and then we check to see if it's yes. And our game, we'll say, is this little method that prints out the letters of a name. And we'll call that. When that method's finished, what happens? Well, it comes back to continue any code that continues after this, right? So what's immediately after the call to plane 3? It's this while condition, while choice dot equals yes. So if they type yes, they want to play the game, it's going to go back and do it again, right? Until they type no, in which case it's not going to go play the game because choice dot equals no, so that's not true. And choice dot equals yes is false, so that will end the loop, and it will come down here and print okay, goodbye. So let's go ahead and try this. Get rid of that. Make a new one of these. Okay. Last one here. Would you like to play a game? Enter yes or no. I'll say yes. Right? Enter your name. So I'll do Fred this time. Here are the letters of your name. Right? We know how that works. Would you like to play a game? So that, what happened, we just went through it. So I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to say yes again. Right? And again, it calls that plane 3 method and asks for a name again. So I'll do my last name, Bartels, and there. Does the same thing again. All the commands in plane 3. And that's the name of it, right? Yes, plane 3. And now I'm going to say no. I'm out of here. It says, okay, goodbye. Okay. So we covered a lot here. We covered, let's start up here and just do a quick review. We covered and or in the conditions that go inside of an if statement. And then we covered the while loop and how the while loop has a condition also, which you need to approach, or inside the body of the loop, you need to approach the condition, or you're going to have an endless loop, which will cause your computer to hang. In plane 3, we talked about how to get a number, and we talked about this length method for strings that tells us how many characters are in the string, and we introduced this new char at method of the string, which can give us the characters at a particular position. And finally, in plane 4, I showed you the do while loop and how you can use that to control the presentation of information to the user so that you can repeat activities under the user's control. Okay, a lot there. You can always watch this more than once if you need to, but thanks for listening. Okay.